So I was recently super upset and thinking a lot of dark thoughts and ideas. Because of this, I was totally unable to function. I was falling apart, had no appetite. I was really worried about it. And I had this thought, like a lie in something that's not real is something that's separate from reality, and it tears apart reality, like I was talking about with the body of death. So I guess somebody having a panic attack, or climate change and destroying the planet as a result of conceiving of the lie that the world is just this endless resource. And that sort of destruction does not mean that, oh, this dark thing is true, and wow, look at that. The real reality is this pain and death. Quite the opposite. That lie is, like I was saying, with the false body, it upholds itself only by destroying reality, very visibly and obviously. That's the only way that something could possibly be false. That's the definition of something being false and being a lie, and being not real, is that it is covering or destroying what is, and what is coherent and beautiful and fully real. I was also learning some Japanese and thinking about how, with a language that I'm not native to, I'm more aware of the features of the language, and that clouds my fluency in reading or speaking, my ability to just see the world beneath the language or through it. I get stuck in the sounds and the grammar and forgetting stuff. But with English, it's more I look at a page and I'm really not even a lot of the time reading the words as words, just the world that they are describing just blooms out transparently. I was also rewatching Blue Planet 2 and the one on the deep sea creatures. I love that documentary. It gives you such an eerie feeling after a while because it's just very alien. Oh man, wait, hold up. You know what, this whole thought connects to that thing about the ultimate surprise being found within the most familiar, but I'm not going to take the time to figure out how it ties in because this is covering enough ground already. Anyhow, so I was watching that, I was looking at them, and trying to just not analyze it too much, but just experience their life as it was presented to me. And I was thinking about how the more integrated I become, and sort of the more deeply rooted in just being, I guess, I am. Instead of identifying purely with sort of my surface ego, the more that I don't have to impose any kind of translation or analysis over these creatures. It's knowing by unknowing. I could just be a space for them to live their own lives in their own worlds. So it seems like when I'm fluent in a language, that language almost disappears and is just transparent to the world through it. And in the same way, when I am fluent in the body or in matter, in my material, or, I don't know, existing existence, when the spirit is integrated with the flesh, when I'm grounded in love in that way, I am transparent to the world or the other and can be a space for them. And so it seems like the language disappears, or myself like disappears and goes away. And this also applies to like being in a flow state of having mind and body integrated, I guess, too. But this is really only half the picture, isn't it? Because, I mean, do they really disappear and like completely go away? Is that what we're going for here? Because in one sense, with Japanese, I can appreciate its structure, the sound of it, the uniqueness and the beauty of the grammar. And often with English, it's just too transparent, like I can't even appreciate the language as language. Like I'm too close. And also, I mean, I'm watching this documentary, but I wouldn't want to like melt completely into the ocean and cease to exist as myself. That wouldn't even be like the right way to be a space for those creatures, unless we're talking about death and the afterlife. I'm not gonna go into that right now. So, and then, you know, conversely, when this language is transparent to me and English is transparent to me and I can just use it fluidly and just the ideas are really, the language is transparent, I've got a really good hold on the grammar of English and I'm executing that much better than if I were consciously thinking about it. It's not like the grammar has gone away, it's there, it's just. And also, okay, so say I'm here and like the sea creatures are there. Say that my consciousness at the depths of me is like this light, and then the body, the physical world, because there's not like a super solid divide, go out from that light. So there's me, if we say that I am that consciousness, like the spirit and light at the core of me, going out from me is, first of all, and closest to me, like my body, my surroundings, my world, and then out there are like the sea creatures that I'm observing or being a space for or whatever. So even as I'm way out here and like smoothly being a space for them, I still have to have a good hold, so to speak, even if it's unconscious, on or effortless, on my own body or like the body that is closer to me. Otherwise I would die or I would like go crazy from watching the fish. So even if it feels like I don't still remember who I am, I still do, otherwise I would disintegrate and also go crazy. And I think we want to like lose language and have it completely go away, or like lose our ego or particular self-identity, or like that seems to be put up as a goal sometimes, because so often it's like a clumsy language that's a language of lies, or it's like this fear-based ego and like the body of death, like I was describing. And we hardly recognize, or it's pretty hard to recognize what like truth is, or what this experience of the glorified body is. I guess enlightened is another word. The image tends to be, I have this power of consciousness and self-consciousness, and have this power of language. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, essentially. And so therefore, I can layer something else over reality and over the world. I can layer this sort of false technic world and false identity over reality. And this is just this mirage. What I layer over is this mirage, and I can lose myself in that mirage. And that needs to go away. So it would almost be better if I were unself-conscious and languageless. But even this very idea of, okay, what I'm doing with my ego or with myself, people use that word differently, with my identity, and with my mind and language is layering something over reality that's like a mirage, that's already like presupposing, yeah, like when I'm talking about imposing stuff over the world or assuming that that's what's happening, that's already presupposing this sort of false separation of language and world. And it's pointing more to the imperfection or the flaw, fallen state of matter, language, the self, the body, rather than to those things in themselves. Because as was very dramatically demonstrated with the whole lies, tearing apart reality. But like a milder version of that is just, it's separate or separable from the world or from reality. If you take that to the farthest conclusion, it's destroying reality. Whereas the truth just simply is. You can't separate. It's indivisible or incorruptible. Now note, like sometimes the fact or the state of affairs is the lie. For instance, like say somebody's in a war-torn state, like a horrible abusive home, and they have in their minds this image of a better world. What's in their minds is more true and more real than what's physically around them. Or sometimes the thought or the language is the lie. For instance, say, I'm, in the middle of say somebody like having a panic attack or like my anxiety that I was in, that was false. What was physically around me is like the reality. It can go both ways, but the point is this sort of two layers of things, and they're at enmity, and one is like destroying the other. Well, the bad one's one is destructive, I'll say. But it's not the creation of my own world that's bad, but it's if that the spirit or habit, again, that like creates and upholds that world is the spirit of death and is destructive. If it upholds itself and creates that world by tearing away what is more vital. It's not language or communication, which is definitely a creation of a world. It's not language or communication that's evil. It's lies and falsehoods that they don't describe what they're describing. They're actually covering it up or cutting at it. It's not the other or the self that's evil, but it's like the confusion or enmity between them. But if we don't see this, it gets to the whole. People often use the term Gnostic to like describe this. Manichaean, I think, is another maybe less controversial word, because I know David Bentley Hart likes to defend the Gnostics. But anyhow, we get to the whole thing of like, you could put it in terms of the scriptures about like, if some part of you offends you, you should like throw it away. But what if what's offending you is just, I don't know, literally reality and existence? Like, our body is the body of Christ and of the Logos and the manifestation of God. And so what ends up happening is we would like throw the baby out with the bathwater is a more less secular way of saying it, but like end up crucifying Christ and like throwing every part of us like into hell ourselves. It's just a mess. Like the counter to a lie isn't silence, it's the truth, which will then the lie will fade away in that light. The counter to like the corruptible body is the incorruptible body. The counter to enmity between the self and other is communion between the self and other, not one gets dissolved in the other, or not one gets dissolved in the other. We're supposed to like give no place to the devil, to the deceiver or the destroyer. Certainly not to give up the world of matter, certainly not to give up one's particular self, certainly not language, to just be given over as a completely corrupt field that's hopeless and we should just escape from. First of all, it's impossible, but well, from certain perspectives, it's impossible. I'm not gonna. Anyhow, the point is, these things are redeemable, or in their core, they're good and real. And like, if you think about it with language, true language, and the best example that I can think of for this is poetry. Because if you're reading, or a good novel is like the same thing. If you're reading really beautiful poem, the language and the world that the language is indicating or creating, they are mutually illuminating and they're completely intertwined. Both are necessary to the whole, and you're like noticing both the sound, the rhythm, the sentence structure, the grammar, and the imagery and the meaning and the world. And I suppose ideally this is also the experience when talking, or just writing prose, or even speaking in a language that one is learning, still trying to work on that perspective shift. But if it's true language in the true world, the word becomes the world becomes the word, creation, theosis, emergence, emanation, completely intertwined. Or with like self-other, or like with self-other communion, knowing by unknowing and knowing by knowing. They're two sides of the coin. And I talk about this more in like that Humanize the Squid video. But like, say that, not that the undersea fish would lose all of its uniqueness and become completely a flat image in just the human world. Or not that I would lose all my humanity and just become completely melted into the fish perspective, but that we could like share a world and reciprocally reconstruct. That this part of like losing one's ego, or on the other half, this part of trying to translate the other's experience into my terms, those are only like steps in the process, or sort of oscillations in the process which we want communion, where nothing is lost and nothing really disappears, but they're so seamlessly integrated that it's effortless. Humanize the squid, squid the human.